In 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower signed the Federal Aid Highway Act, approving the construction of the interstate system, a group of controlled access freeways making their way all across America in a vein-like way, reaching every major city on the map. Most believe this to be where the idea of freeways in this country started, but they were actually used for decades before this act was signed. So today I'm going to go in depth on freeways before the interstate system existed. Before this video starts though, I wanted to ask if you would please consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy my content. I make weekly geography videos about interesting topics like this, and the growth on this channel is my best motivation. You simply hitting that subscribe button makes me genuinely happy. So if you would please just quickly do that, it would mean so much to me. Thank you. So the idea of the interstate system being the birth of freeways in this country is utterly false. The first dual highway opened in Italy all the way back in 1924, 32 years before 1956. This was the autostrada between Milan and Varese, even today forming parts of the A8 and A9 motorways. The idea of a freeway didn't make its way to North America until a few years later in 1927, when New York opened the Bronx River Parkway. This being the first road in the country to introduce a median strip to separate the opposing lanes. But none of these roads were really what we now call controlled access highways, because they still had intersections, and were only a small step towards the completed definition of freeways. This continued to happen over the next decade, before finally the first real American freeway was built in California. This was the Arroyo Seco Parkway between Los Angeles and Pasadena. Opened in 1940, it largely still exists today, holding up fairly well over the years. Now, it makes a lot of sense that Los Angeles would be the first city to build an American freeway, being one of the iconic places in the country for the interstate system and urban highways. But so far there is something similar about all these freeways, in that they were built solely within one metropolitan area. America had not yet heard of a cross-country highway, but they soon would with the building of the iconic Pennsylvania Turnpike. This was an engineering feat to say the least, becoming the first freeway to connect one city to another. It traveled across the Appalachians in Pennsylvania, an area that at the time was very difficult to traverse. And it was a very new idea for residents of the eastern United States, but also a welcomed one. In this first year, estimated traffic was blown out of the water, with tens of thousands of drivers taking the route per day. This was a good thing from a revenue standpoint, but from a traffic standpoint, it quickly became a problem. See, at this time, they couldn't afford to make dual tunnels, and they had the highway go down to just 2 lanes for these portions. This quickly formed a major bottleneck in these areas, something Pennsylvania could afford to fix because of the revenue generated by tolls. It was a seriously clever idea. An underrated player in the pre-interstate freeway movement was the portion of Route 66 going through the Ozarks near Newburgh and St. Robert. This was called Hooker's Cut. So if you're traveling on Route 66, you'll notice the road mysteriously goes to 4 lanes, with a median in the middle. It then cuts through some pretty hefty portions of mountain. This is such an interesting portion of highway, because obviously now it's not really used by anyone, and feels somewhat abandoned. Basically, it was a bypass of the first Route 66 that went through a very dangerous portion of the roadway called Devil's Elbow. This is a beautiful area, and is absolutely worth a visit. Because whether you're on Route 66, even more historic Route 66, or I-44, it's still absolutely gorgeous. Next up, we have one of the most famous pre-interstate freeways, this being the New Jersey Turnpike. Opened in 1949, it was not originally built to be a toll road. However, the state didn't have funds for it, so they were forced to come up with those funds in any way possible, and tolls was the easiest way to do so. The Turnpike became a great way for drivers to make it through New Jersey without adding too much congestion to the local roads in the state. With a low number of exits, the idea was simple but effective. Though because it was so simple and easy to use, the traffic immediately became too much to bear. And it only took 6 years before widening projects started. And they went on and on up until today, where they continue to happen. One problem with building the Turnpike so early on is I-295, the interstate that runs right next to it for the whole southern portion of the state. Basically, they needed more exits onto the Turnpike, but that simply wasn't possible because of the cost. So they decided the easiest thing to do was to make a federally funded interstate right next to the Turnpike. This may have been the best idea then, but it looks so stupid now, and really gives me nothing but the thought that there could have been a better way to do this. So the year was then 1956, and the interstate system was created. This marked a complete shift in how freeway travel happened, and most importantly set a nationwide standard for how they were meant to be built, something the U.S. did not currently have. Highways were different in every state. Some had wider lanes, less median, different types of side rail material. It was all very messy. With the interstate system, that was fixed, and America was connected in the best way possible. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Carport, Dominic Psyche, Jeremy Crone, Rosebud4, Aaron Washington, and Bryson. If you want to become a channel member, the link is in the description, as well as the join button right next to the subscribe button. It's basically just a very easy way to give back to the channel if you really, really like the content. It helps me out as I'm basically just saving for college with all of this money. So you can trust it's not going to a bad cause. You're basically just supporting me as a person. Thank you very, very much.